Hi everyone, so today we're going to be reviewing a video called What I Eat in a Day, High Protein Vegan Easy Dinner Recipes by Andrew Bernard slash the Nard Dog Cooks. This one's got 1.8 million views, so let's see if they know what a high protein vegan day of eating looks like. So just to say, the first thing, the cashews are okay, I guess, for a high protein day of eating. Broccoli, I mean, it's not adding much to the protein content. Garlic, similarly, not adding much to the protein content. Chickpeas, yes, pretty good. Soy sauce, obviously not. I mean, yeah, all these sauces and starches aren't really doing anything except for flavor and texture. Brown rice, again, it's got some protein, but it's not clear how digestible that is. We'll get into it in a minute. Okay, so this is meal number one. Let's talk a little bit about how to understand this. So again, this video is being marketed as a high protein vegan what I eat in a day recipe or what I eat in a day video, right? So let's talk about that. So in order to understand the digestibility or the protein content of vegan foods in particular, we need to talk about how to measure that, right? So if there's a gram of protein in meat, you're going to absorb that gram of protein. There's no issues, or even milk mostly. But if there's a gram of protein in a plant food, it is blocked by other things. You're not going to absorb all of that, right? So there are two indices that have been used to understand how well you absorb those plant-based proteins. One of them is called PDCAS, and the other one is called DIAS, right? PDCAAS, and you can see that stands for Protein Digestibility Corrected Amino Acid Score, right? This was originally designed in the 90s to judge the protein quality of infant formula. And what they would do is they would basically look at the feces of children and say, okay, if the protein's coming out, it definitely wasn't ingested, right? So based on this, they were able to get some basic scores. DIAS is sort of taking that to the next level because we know in the large intestine, so some of what's digested is digested in the large intestine, and it's not digested by us, by humans. It's being fermented. It's not really digested. It's being fermented by bacteria. And so the problem becomes, okay, if you count that protein that the bacteria is eating, that's not really protein that humans are eating. And when the bacteria eat it, they convert it mostly into fatty acids. So you're not getting that protein. So that's why we have the DIAS, which, again, I won't get into the details, but they used animal models. They used the model of a pig to look at what's actually being digested in the end of the small intestine. So before this is called the ileum, I believe, before it reaches the large intestine. Okay, so based on this, what can we say about meal number one? I made these little charts. So in the first column, there's the protein per 100 grams. In the second column, there's the DIAS and the PDCAS score where I was able to find them. In the next column, I'm talking about limiting amino acids, right? So in fact, all plant foods are known to have some kind of limiting amino acid. So we need all of the amino acids in the right amount in order to be able to digest protein. If you're short in one of the amino acids, then that will limit your ability to digest all of the protein in the meal, all of the amino acids in the meal, right? The next thing is just some guesses based on what I think is a decent size for vegans, because he hasn't really said is this serving for 1, 2 more people. So I'm just guessing as to what the serving size is, and they're based on the serving size, as I'm calculating total protein, and then the DIAS score and the PDCAS score. Right. So as you can see, based on this, cashews, all right, 18 per 100 grams, DIAS score of 40 to 50%. PDCAS score I wasn't able to find. Or PDCAS score is actually 90, so it seems to do better on PDCAS than on DIAS. It has a limiting amino acid. So, these are the calculations based on that. And I did similar calculations for all of these other things. Broccoli, as I say, more or less irrelevant. Garlic, completely irrelevant. Chickpeas, yeah, that's all right. That's not bad. Brown rice, not doing great with your brown rice. And based on this, I came to these totals, right? So as you can see, now I also did an example meal, so a meat-based meal, so that we could set a kind of baseline calculation. So in my view, 30 to 80 grams of digestible protein is not bad here. And so, or even 30 to 50 grams. So we're doing only 62 grams of total protein, out of which 38.1 is absorbable, and according to Diaz, and 43 grams is absorbable according to PDCAS. So I think that's okay. But just for reference, here's a beef meal comparison. So when we do the beef meal comparison, we see that the protein per 100 grams is 26. Diaz score is 100, PDCAS is 92. There's no limiting amino acid, and the serving size is 250. That's a pretty decent size, so like half a pound of meat. Total protein 65. So you're not getting to these numbers if we go back to the vegan meal. We're not getting to those numbers, but we're doing all right. I mean, that's not bad, I would say, for the first meal in a vegan day.
Believe it or not, this is the meal that is responsible for me going vegan. Seriously, it is so surprisingly delightful. Now, of course, there's plenty of reasons why people go vegan. For me, this meal made me a believer. Okay, so that may have came off a bit strong, but I guess what I'm saying is, for me, this meal is what made me consider veganism. If that subject is interesting to people, I can make another video on the topic while illustrating this dish and variations or others. I guess what I'm saying is, if you're looking for something to wow some socks off, or find something more glycemic for a mixed diet family, this vegan meal will breathe life into the unimaginative weekly meal line. Outside of the taste and protein profits, one of the things I like most about this recipe is that it can be zero waste. Stems on broccoli are edible, so simply chop them up in half-inch cubes and toss them in to get a head start before the rest of the dish. Unlike a banana peel, which is also edible, but there's a bit of instant regret and self-reflecting on your life choices when you bite into one of those. Yeah, at least that's what I remember. I tried to block it out of my memory. During the cooking process of this recipe, you want to have some extra vegetable stock on hand. This is in case you accidentally have your heat too high and or your oil or sauce is just soaking up way too quickly. You can make some variations by simply swapping out the broccoli for cauliflower. Roasted cashews, I do not swap with any other nut, since other nuts do not have the same neutral flavor that cashews do. If I'm out of cashews, I tend to just use more chickpeas. But whatever you do, stay away from salted cashews in this recipe. Say you want to leave the cashews out and add maybe some pinto beans or black beans. Definitely make the recipe without any sauce first. This way, you can get a better understanding of how whatever you're going to add is going to encourage the flavors of the dish. Either way, you got this.
Okay, so before he does this thing, let's do our thing, right? So let's look at this high protein meal number 2. And what we see is that, okay, so it's got walnuts. Walnuts, decent in Diaz. Some of these I couldn't find PDCAS numbers, so I just sort of estimated based on similar numbers. I think actually I was able to find walnuts. I wasn't able to find cashews, so I estimated based on other numbers there. And I've always tried to be extra generous. What we find in this meal, aside from the walnuts, is that there's not really a significant source of protein in this meal. So when you add up all the total protein, you're getting to 41. And when you put that through some of the calculations here, you're barely getting to 2021. So to me, I mean, a minimum high protein meal would be at least 30 grams of digestible protein. And this guy is not there yet. So why did I want to make this video? I mean, one reason I want to make this video is to just show you that it's not easy. This guy is saying that he's making a high protein vegan day of eating. That's the title of his video. And he is not even hitting his targets in that video. Let's get back to it.
Look to avoid carbs, but if you do, this meal should hit home. I more frequently look to avoid gluten, and this recipe meets those needs as well. See, I like to eat a lot of fruit. Bananas, apples, mangoes, these fruits contain a good amount of carbs, but on the other hand, they're also really great sources for potassium, vitamin A, vitamin C.
So no, vitamin A, no. They may be decent sources for beta carotene, which if you can convert beta carotene to vitamin A is useful for you, but please don't delude yourself into thinking you're getting any vitamin A as a vegan.
And with all diets, there's that give and take. So I find it best to eat different things in moderation. But I'm no saint. I get stuck on certain foods longer than I should. Often. For this recipe, you can use any, beef crumbles or something else if you didn't want to do the walnut meat method you see here, which on a
walnut meat method is hilarious, right? Because walnuts, in addition, so what is not being captured by the PDCAS and the diaz and that kind of stuff is that all of these, especially nuts and seeds and so on, contain anti-nutrients, which is going to further digest not just the protein availability, but also the availability of all your vitamins and minerals in the meal. So calling it a meat substitute is a bit of a, maybe texture-wise, not even. As someone who's done all these vegan hacks, it doesn't even approximate the texture of meat. So don't fool yourself into thinking that this is a meat substitute meal. It's not.
Positive end, that could also help speed up some of the prep time. Often, but not always, I like to stick with more of a, whole food approach. Because looking at product packaging for, substitutes can be daunting. This may be just me, but does anyone else see the ingredient list more of like a warning label?
Oh, 100%, man. Anything that you got to read the ingredient list for is already a warning. But when you read the ingredient list on some of these vegan products, I mean, it's pretty clearly they're telling you it's toxic in no uncertain terms.
Anyway, the walnut method, if for whatever reason you're allergic, this can also be done with, say, some sunflower seeds. In the description, you can find the method for that as well. During the cooking process of this, at some point you see me point into the middle of the pan, and that's because I'm trying to show you the remnants that's left from the walnut. That there, you can pour a little more stock on it, as I did, or even add a little bit more flavor with like a dry wine, make sure that's vegan, of course, and that's going to deglaze the substance. Meaning it's just going to lift it right off the bottom and now incorporate it into the recipe, packing some real good flavor in there. When making the recipe, I actually enjoy the avocado cold. So if I know I'm making this later in the day, what I'll do is actually refrigerate the avocado. Then when I add the hot, taco walnut mixture to the cold avocado, the best way I can describe it is kind of like that same feeling you get when you add cold ice cream to a warm brownie. That extra ice cream on top is so wrong with you, but it just feels like the right thing to do.
Yeah, there's no such thing as vegan butter. This is some kind of plant oils. If it's not coconut and palm, it's probably hydrogenated plant oils. Not super good for you. Just as an aside, this guy eats a lot of garlic. I mean, eating a head of garlic with every meal is probably not advisable. It's going to cause some gastric issues. Garlic can act as a kind of antibiotic. So I would be, I wouldn't eat as much garlic as this person is eating. Again, vegan Parmesan is not Parmesan. I don't know what it is. It's some kind of synthetic substance, food-like substance. I'm tempted to say it's not really food, is it? Man, this method of cooking pasta has become popular recently, but I still think it sucks.
So I just made this meal, and
So before we get into what he has to say about his meal, let's do the macros here. So this one is the most disappointing by far. I don't know what this is doing on a high protein meal day. Um, I had to estimate the protein from the vegan cheese based on what I could find on the internet, but it's not great. So, even the total protein here is not even half of what I would consider a high protein meal, right? It's 13. 30 is what I would consider a high protein meal. So, even the total protein is basically nothing. And then when you do the diaz and the PDCAS, it ends up being pretty pathetic. So I don't know, it's just remarkable to me that this person thought that this meal was a good one to include in this video. And I think he's going to tell us why. I think he found it tasty, but I don't see how that's, this is being labeled, this is being marketed as a high protein vegan day of eating. And if someone makes this meal thinking that it's a high protein meal, I mean, they're just deluding themselves.
my mom for Mother's Day. She loved it. She started teasing me, saying like, where did I buy it at? In her words, she said, "This tastes like a restaurant made it." My mom's not vegan, by the way.
So I mean, this kind of talk, like I never understood. So I mean, I was vegan for many years. I was making very tasty food. The fact that you can make tasty food as a vegan doesn't mean it's not nutrient deficient food. Doesn't mean that it's food that you probably shouldn't be eating. Doesn't mean that this particular meal is way deficient in protein to serve as any kind of it's not even a meal. For me and my clients, unless there's a certain percentage of protein in the meal, doesn't count as food, right? Not even a snack.
And she's also not a skeptic. The biggest praises are from my dad, who is totally skeptic. He's the person that you just don't tell him he's vegan until after they had seconds. His praises came with like some real old school cool phrases. Pops, yo, this is banging, yo. Yeah, my family calls me Pops. Story for another day. But what can I say? He's my dad, so, I play along. Yeah, the roof is on fire. The best way to describe this recipe is to say it tastes very similar to an Alfredo. It's very creamy, and I just love that it comes together in one pot. Sometimes to help this meal go further, I have a recipe for roasted cauliflower that I'll use, and I'll put it in the description as well. With this recipe
Even with the roasted cauliflower, you're nowhere near hitting your protein targets with this meal.
calling for canned coconut milk, you can substitute that with another thick plant-based milk, such as oat or soy, pea, or if you have some dairy-free yogurt that you need to use up before the expiration date, you also toss that in as a substitute. Just make sure it's plain. Although dairy-free yogurt costs like a small paycheck, so if it's expired already, you better use that up for like lotion or skin cream. I don't know, but don't label waste. This is another recipe that I like to reserve a little bit of vegetable stock on hand, just in case your heat is a little too high during the process of boiling.
So he's just going to talk more about the cooking process and so on, and I'm frankly bored with this. So listen, the point of this video is just this. The point of this video is this was labeled high protein, what I eat in a day. There's out of 3 meals, only 1 meal was what anyone would consider a high protein meal, right? Based on the protein availability, the protein digestibility, right? 2 meals, so that middle meal was kind of in the middle, but it fell short when we actually did the PDCAS and DIAS calculations. That third meal is nowhere near. Like it's not a high protein meal by any stretch of the imagination, right? So the point being that, and what happens when we don't eat meals with sufficient protein? At this guy's age, probably nothing. Like he's got enough muscle mass on his body. He's got enough lean protein on his body. His body can just quote unquote cannibalize that, and he's going to be absolutely fine. But after 10 or 15 or 20 years of doing that, I can't tell you when. Could be in a year, could be in 10 years, could be longer. At some point, the body's going to run out of those nutrients, and you're going to start having very serious issues. So this is why it's worth taking into account these PDCAS and DIAS scores. This is why it's worth, if you are, whole foods, plant-based or whatever, it's worth being very religious about hitting those targets, about doing your calculations and making sure that you are hitting those targets. And this is why, for those of us who, maybe damaged ourselves being vegan or vegetarian, this is why, because it's not easy. As you can see, this is someone who's talking about it, someone who assumably claims to have some level of expertise about these issues, and he's not doing it right. So if he's not doing it right, then who can do it right? So the last thing I wanted to say about this one is that, look, in order to not hit his protein targets, as I said, I was very generous in how I calculated this. So I calculated big meals, right? So, we're talking about half a kilo of food per meal, maybe a little bit more. So we're talking about more than a pound, 3 pounds of food per day. That's just the meals. I'm sure, as anyone who's been vegan or vegetarian knows, you're probably snacking a little bit too. So 3 pounds of food a day, that's a lot. Now, if you are working out, if you're, running, whatever it is, and you're using that many calories, that's fine. Calories is the wrong term, but for the sake of argument, let's just use it for now. But most of us, let's be honest, are not using that many calories. Most of us have a little bit of weight to lose. So when you want to lose weight, then you want to be able to hit those protein targets with less food, so that you can actually, use some of the nutrients that are on your body, especially the fat that's on your body, instead of just getting it all from outside, right? So in other words, this is failing on many, many different levels. But one level it's failing is that, you're never going to be able to lose weight eating this kind of a diet. It's just not possible. You're going to be consuming too many nutrients, too much food, too many carbohydrates, however you want to see it, and you won't be able to lose a pound. So with that, I'm Samir. I'm a health coach and a PhD student. I'll see you next time.